welcome back to my channel. My name is Eliana. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today we're going to continue on with our study in John. We're finally going to finish chapter 1, yay, and start chapter 2. So grab your Bibles and let us open up to John 1:43. John 1:43 through 2:12 says, "The next day Jesus decided to leave for Galilee. He found Philip and told him, 'Follow me.' Now Philip was from Bethsaida, the hometown of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and told him, 'We have found the one Moses wrote about in the law, and so do the prophets, Jesus the son of Joseph from Nazareth.' 'Can anything good come out of Nazareth?' Nathanael asked him. 'Come and see,' Philip answered. Then Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him and said about him, 'Here truly is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit.' 'How do you know me?' Nathanael asked. 'Before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you,' Jesus answered. 'Rabbi,' Nathanael replied, 'you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel.' Jesus responded to him, 'Do you believe because I told you I saw you under the fig tree? You will see greater things than this.' Then he said, 'Truly I tell you, you will see heaven opened and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man.' On the third day, a wedding took place in Cana of Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding as well. When the wine ran out, Jesus' mother told him, 'They don't have any wine.' 'What has this concern of yours to do with me, woman?' Jesus asked. 'My hour has not yet come.' 'Do whatever he tells you,' his mother told the servants. Now 6 stone water jars had been set there for Jewish purification. Each contained 20 or 30 gallons. 'Fill the jars with water,' Jesus told them. So they filled them to the brim. Then he said to them, 'Now draw some out and take it to the head waiter.' And they did. When the head waiter tasted the water, after it had become wine, he did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. He called the groom and told him, 'Everyone sets out the fine wine first, then after people are drunk, the inferior. But you have kept the fine wine until now.' Jesus did this, the first of his signs, in Cana of Galilee. He revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After this, he went down to Capernaum, together with his mother, his brothers, and his disciples, and they stayed there only a few days." So in this passage, we see Jesus call 2 more of his disciples and perform his first miracle. And just like always, we're going to zoom into specific parts and really dive into what they're saying. The first section we're going to zoom in on is verses 43 through 46. And this is where we meet Philip. And Jesus calls Philip to follow him as a disciple. But you would think this is the first time we meet Philip, but in other Gospels, this isn't actually the first time Jesus has met Philip. But this is his formal invitation as a disciple of Jesus, saying, "Follow me." And Philip goes. And then we see where Philip is from, which is Bethsaida. Bethsaida means house of the fishermen or fisher town. That was their livelihood. And it's also the hometown of Andrew and Peter, who we saw last week when Jesus called them. Philip tells Nathanael, "Hey, we found Jesus, the one that Moses and the prophets wrote about." And Nathanael is like, "Nazareth? Really?" He's not thinking Nazareth is a big deal and anything good can come out of there. And instead of arguing with him, Philip just says, "Hey, come and see." So now going into verses 47 through 49, we see that when Jesus first sees Nathanael, he doesn't harbor him about, "Oh, you didn't think that I could come from Nazareth?" He goes, "Hey, there's an Israelite in whom there's no deceit. There's nothing to hide with him. He's not trying to, con you or anything. He's just an honest man." And so he gives him a compliment. Nathanael is like, "Hey, well, how do you know me?" And Jesus says, "Well, I saw you under the fig tree." And there is some scholars that think the fig tree was an actual place, or the rabbis of that day also used under the fig tree to represent meditating and praying, meditating on scripture and praying. So it could be either of those, but Nathanael takes that as Jesus really saw him. Maybe it was under a fig tree. We don't really know. And so Nathanael testifies that Jesus is the Son of God and the King of Israel. And then going into verses 50 and 51, finishing out chapter 1, let's go. This small act of Jesus just saying, "Hey, I saw you under the fig tree," is nothing to be compared to his other miracles. Even his first miracle, we see him turning water into wine. nothing to be compared to just like, oh, I saw you under the fig tree. And so he's telling Nathanael, like, my ministry is going to be even greater than this. You're going to see greater signs. And then specifically in verse 51, saying, you will see heaven opened and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. So this references Genesis 28:12. Genesis 28:12 is telling the story of Jacob. He had left Beersheba and is laying down for the night, and he dreamed, verse 12, a stair rose set on the ground with its top reaching the sky, and God's angels were going up and down on it. And so he has this dream of like the ladder, and so Jesus is saying that you will see heaven open and the angels will ascend and descend on the Son of Man. So he's showing that he's now going to be the link between heaven and earth. He's going to be our mediator. Specifically, Son of Man is a new title we see for Jesus in this passage. It's one of Jesus's favorite titles he uses for himself because it doesn't have any military or powerful connotation like King of Kings or Prince of Peace or Son of God or Messiah. At that time, the Jews were expecting the Messiah to be a great war leader that would wipe out the Romans for them, but Jesus comes humbly as a Son of Man, living life right next to them, and is specifically used in Daniel 7:13 and 14. This is one of the visions that Daniel has from God. It says, I continued watching in the night visions, and suddenly one like a son of man, who was coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was escorted before him. He was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, so that those of every people, nation, and language should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will not be destroyed. So Jesus uses that title as Son of Man to reference that prophecy in Daniel, but then also to show that he didn't come with military might in his first coming. That is all of chapter 1. Let's go. So now we're going to dive into chapter 2. Okay, so John 2:1-12 show the first sign of Jesus, and it's at a wedding. So it starts with saying on the third day, and this story continues on from chapter 1. So it's about 2 days after he called Nathanael and Philip. And we see that Jesus was invited to the wedding. He knew these people. He participated in the celebration of marriage. And by doing so, he also blessed marriage and saying, like, this is part of the kingdom. This is part of my plan. And he blesses it through his first sign. So, verse 3, we see that the wine runs out. Now, this may not seem like a big deal, like, oh, okay, they just, we're shorthanded on drinks. But this would have been a huge social faux pas. This would have been a huge deal. It would have shamed the couple that just got married for the rest of their marriage, because it was their job to provide all of the food and drinks necessary for the celebration. And a wedding wasn't just one day at that time. It was days long of celebrating this new couple. So it would have been a huge deal. And so Mary brings this problem to Jesus. And Jesus asked Mary, what has this concern of yours to do with me, woman? My hour has not yet come. So one, woman is not a derogatory phrase in this. It is like saying lady, but he doesn't address Mary as his mother in this. It shows kind of a line that his ministry started, and there is a separation now between his mother and himself. He's going to address his father above everyone else. Jesus still obeys his mother and completes the sign. However, he does it on his terms and in his way, showing that humans aren't the ones that are calling the shots. So it is showing that Jesus does complete his miracles, but they're only going to be done to glorify the Father. And Mary sends the servants to Jesus and just says, do whatever he says. So then in verse 6-8, 8, we see the means of how Jesus completed this miracle, and he uses what's at hand. He could have just made wine appear, but he allows these servants to participate in the miracle. So it says there's 6 jars of about 20 to 30 gallons each, which would have been 120 to 180 gallons of water that these people are filling up, which is so many. So then Jesus tells the servants, fill them up, and he didn't need the servants to do that, obviously, but he allows them to participate in this miracle, and the servants fill the jars up to the brim. And that's not just, a notation, but it's important to know Jesus didn't add anything to this water. The jars were full, so he didn't need to add anything. He doesn't perform a ritual to transform this water like we see with Moses turning the bitter water sweet. It just transforms. Jesus doesn't need to say words or perform extra steps to do this. And so to make wine, that requires grapes, crushing the grapes, fermenting the grapes, time, but Jesus does it like that. Fills the water, and he tells the servants, hey, bring it to the head waiter. The head waiter was the head of the whole wedding. He was in charge of making sure everything was running smoothly. So sending this water that is now wine to the head waiter required some faith on the servants' part that they were to bring what they saw was water when they put it in the jar to the head waiter. And the head waiter is like, this is the best wine. So in verse 9, we see that the head waiter didn't know Jesus had turned this water into wine. He just thought they had found extra wine. And so he gives a compliment to the bridegroom, saying, okay, most people wait until everyone's drank and then they pull out the cheap stuff, but you saved the best stuff for last. So Jesus blesses the couple that way. He could have just made any kind of wine he wanted, but he made good wine. Then we also see that 120 to 130 gallons of wine is a lot, and that would have been an excess, but Jesus does this to bless the couple. It shows that, one, they saved the best wine for last, so they were treating their guests in that way. They had excess wine that they could sell after the wedding celebrations were over, and then also it would establish them as, look, they had more than enough to provide. And so Jesus gives them an abundance out of his mercy. In verse 11 and 12, we see kind of the end of this section, and it says that Jesus did this, the first of his signs in Cana of Galilee, and he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. So the sign just reinforced the disciples' belief in Jesus, and then it also was the first of many signs. And then in verse 12, it says they went down to Capernaum, which is like the headquarters of Jesus's ministry, but they only stayed there for a couple of days. So that was our study today. We finished chapter 1. We're halfway through chapter 2. Let's go. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please hit the thumbs up button, maybe subscribe, and leave a comment about what you're studying in the Word, and I'd love to hear about it. And next week we're going to be in chapter 2, verses 13 through 25, and I will see you then. I love y'all, and hope you have a great day. Bye.